In 36 years on this bench, I have seen people walk into this courtroom wearing many kinds of armor. Some wear anger, some wear tears, some wear carefully prepared excuses. But every now and then, someone walks in wearing a smile, so confident, so comfortable, that it tells you everything you need to know before they say a single word. The morning Captain Raymond Gallow walked into my courtroom, he was smiling that smile. He thought he was walking into a minor inconvenience. He had no idea what was waiting for him in the file on my desk. If you believe that a badge is a responsibility, not a privilege, and that the law must apply to everyone who swears to uphold it, subscribe to this channel right now. Because what happened in my courtroom that morning is something I have never forgotten. It was a Tuesday in March. The gallery was full the way it gets on busy mornings. A young woman with a baby on her lap, an older man in a postal uniform who had come straight from his route, a teenager who kept his eyes on the floor, embarrassed to be there. The ordinary people of Providence, doing their best, handling the things that needed handling. I always take a moment before I begin. I look out at those faces. I remind myself that every name on the docket is attached to a life, a whole life, with pressure and love and struggle inside it. Then Officer Reyes called the name, Captain Raymond Gallow. The room shifted, just slightly, the way a room does when a title lands in it unexpectedly. A few heads turned toward the door. He came in with the ease of a man who had never been seriously inconvenienced. Raymond Gallow, 52 years old, 26 years on the Providence Police Department, the last 4 as a precinct captain. He was in his uniform. The silver bars on his collar caught the light. His posture was the practiced posture of authority. Shoulders back, chin slightly elevated. He reached the podium and looked up at me with a grin. "Judge Caprio, nice to finally meet you formally, like we were at a Chamber of Commerce breakfast." "Good morning, Captain," I said. "I'll be honest with you," he said, relaxed, easy. "I'm a little embarrassed to be here. You know how it is. You get busy. Things pile up. I should have handled this a long time ago." "Yes," I said, "you should have." Something in my tone made him blink. Not much, just a small recalibration. He kept his smile, but it tightened slightly at the edges. The file had 5 violations. I took my time with it. I have found over the years that silence does a particular kind of work in a courtroom. It tells people that what is happening is serious, that we are not going to rush through this. The first citation: parking in a bus stop zone on Meridian Street. 15 minutes. A city bus had been forced to stop in the travel lane. "Captain, do you recall this one?" "I do," he said. "I was responding to a call. I was in and out. The bus driver's report says passengers had to board from the lane. An elderly passenger fell stepping up. He shifted his weight, very slightly. I didn't know about that." "No," I said. "People rarely know about the consequences they leave behind." The second citation: double parked on Fenwick Avenue in front of an elementary school during afternoon dismissal. 22 minutes. "Captain, I was picking someone up nearby. It was a quick stop." 22 minutes during a school dismissal is not a quick stop. It is the entire dismissal. I looked at him steadily. The crossing guard filed a separate note. "She states that parent pickup was backed into the street because your vehicle blocked the designated area. She had to redirect traffic manually for the duration." He said nothing. His smile had retreated. The third citation: blocking a fire hydrant on Carver Street. 41 minutes. "This one concerns me most on its face," I said. "Do you have an explanation?" "I was meeting someone in the building. I didn't intend to be there that long." 41 minutes, I repeated. "If a fire had started in that building, do you know what the delay caused by a blocked hydrant can mean?" He looked at the podium. "Yes, Your Honor, I know what it means." "Do you?" I said. "Because a man who truly understands what a blocked hydrant means does not park in front of one for 41 minutes." The room was very quiet now. The easy energy he had brought in with him was gone. In its place was something more serious, the sound of a courtroom actually working. The fourth and fifth citations were simpler, expired meter violations, both unpaid for over 8 months. With penalties, the total came to $980. He had not paid. He had not appeared at his original hearing. The summons had been issued twice. Captain Gallow, I said, you have been on this force for 26 years. You know how this process works. You know what a summons means. Why did you not appear? He was quiet for a moment. Honestly, please, I didn't think it would come to this. I figured I'd get it sorted. You figured, I said slowly, that it would sort itself. He had the decency not to answer that, because we both knew what it meant. He had figured that being a captain would create a certain amount of buffer between him and accountability, that someone would make a call or let it go or simply not push it forward. He had not sorted it. He had waited for it to disappear. It hadn't disappeared. It had landed on my desk. I had been working through the file methodically, deliberately, the way I always do when I want a person to feel the weight of each item before I move to the next. But now I turn to the last page of the attachment section, and what I found there changed the entire tenor of the morning. It was a citizen complaint. 3 pages, handwritten on lined notebook paper in the careful script of someone who had sat down and chosen every word. The name at the top was Evelyn Marsh. I did not know that name, but when I read the first paragraph, I understood immediately why it was in this file. Evelyn Marsh was 73 years old. She had been a school librarian in Providence for 31 years. She had retired 4 years ago and now lived alone on Carver Street, where Captain Gallow had parked in front of the fire hydrant for 41 minutes. I read the complaint aloud because I wanted everyone in that room to hear it. She wrote that on the evening in question, she had smelled smoke in her building. She had called 911 immediately. The fire department arrived within 4 minutes. She wrote that she watched from the street as the first engine crew discovered the hydrant blocked. She wrote that she watched them radio for an alternative water source. She wrote that she counted the minutes while they waited. She wrote that the fire was contained to a single apartment. She wrote that the tenant, an elderly man named Frank Okafor, lost his furniture, his clothing, his photographs, 40 years of his life. She wrote that the fire marshal's report indicated the delay in water access contributed to the spread within the unit. She wrote, I don't know if anyone will read this, but I watched those firefighters do everything they could while they waited for water. And I watched Mr. Okafor stand on the sidewalk holding one photograph he had managed to grab. Just one. I think someone should know what that night looked like from the street. The courtroom was completely still. I looked up at Raymond Gallow. His face had changed entirely. The confidence was gone. The ease was gone. What was left was something raw and uncomfortable. The face of a man who has just heard something he cannot unhear. Did you know about this? I asked. No. His voice was quieter than it had been all morning. Were you aware of the fire on Carver Street? I saw something in the department report. I didn't connect it. You didn't connect a fire on the street where you had parked to the fire that occurred while you were parked there. He swallowed. No, Your Honor, I didn't. I believed him. People who are lying under pressure look for exits. They start explaining, qualifying, offering alternative interpretations. Raymond Gallow was doing none of that. He was standing very still, like a man who has just realized he is standing in rubble. Captain, I said, let me ask you something. He looked at me. When you came in this morning, you were smiling. You made a joke about being embarrassed. You treated this like a formality, a box to check. Is that fair? A pause. Yes, he said, that's fair. Why? He thought about it, because I've seen a lot of cases come through the department. Parking violations. I've thought of them as minor, administrative, the kind of thing that has a fine attached so the city can move on. And now, he shook his head slowly. Now I'm thinking about a man standing on a sidewalk, holding one photograph. The words landed in the room and stayed there. I want to tell you something I believe deeply. Accountability is not punishment for its own sake. Accountability is the process by which a person is made to see the full consequence of their choices. Not the abstract consequence, The real one, with a name and a face attached. Raymond Gallow had not known about Frank Okafor when he walked into my courtroom. He had parked in front of that hydrant the way people sometimes do when they carry enough authority to believe consequences will be managed, not out of malice, out of a slow, quiet erosion of attention to the people his choices affected. That erosion is insidious. It happens gradually. You stop seeing yourself in the line of people waiting for the bus. You stop imagining the crossing guard redirecting traffic in the cold. You stop thinking about the elderly man whose building is filling with smoke while the fire crew waits for water. You don't become a bad person overnight. You just stop paying attention. And the longer you go without being required to pay attention, the easier it becomes not to. My job in that moment was to require him to pay attention. Captain Gallow, I said, I want you to answer a question honestly. Not for me, for yourself. He waited. If the man who had parked in front of that hydrant had been a civilian, and that same fire had occurred, and the same delay had happened, what would your department have done? A long silence. We would have investigated, he said finally. Depending on the findings, there likely would have been a criminal referral. For reckless endangerment, possibly yes. And yet here you stand, with a different result, because of who you are. He didn't argue. There was nothing to argue. That's not justice, I said quietly, and I don't think, in your heart, you believe it should be. His jaw worked. He looked down at the podium. No, he said, I don't. The prosecutor, a careful and measured young man named Gregory Park, had been watching the proceedings with his folder closed in front of him. He stood. Your Honor, the city requests full penalties given the nature of the violations, the failure to appear, and the documented consequence of the Carver Street incident. I nodded. Inspector Reyes, standing at his usual post, caught my eye briefly. He gave me a look I recognized after many years, not of judgment, of witnessing. He understood what this moment required. I looked at Raymond Gallow. Here is what is going to happen. He straightened. You will pay the full $980. No reduction, no arrangement, paid within 30 days.
Yes, Your Honor.
You will complete 120 hours of community service. Not departmental community service, not organized events where you wear your uniform and shake hands. You will report to the Providence Fire Department's Community Outreach Division. You will work alongside firefighters. You will participate in fire safety education in the neighborhoods you have policed for 26 years. You will understand from the ground level what the people who respond to emergencies actually contend with. He was nodding slowly. You will go personally to Frank Okafor. You will introduce yourself by name, without your rank. You will not explain the legal situation. You will simply tell him that you are sorry for your part in what happened to him. You will bring nothing. This is not a photo opportunity. It is an apology. His eyes had become glassy. And within 60 days, you will implement a written policy in your precinct. It will cover parking protocols for officers on and off duty. It will be clear. It will be enforced, and it will carry your name on it. You will stand in front of your officers and explain why that policy exists. Not in general terms, in specific terms.
Yes, Your Honor.
I paused. Captain Gallow, you have given 26 years to this city. That matters. I am not dismissing that. But it does not purchase immunity. In fact, it does the opposite. It raises the expectation. The longer you carry the badge, the more clearly you should see the people it is meant to protect, not less clearly. He was not smiling now. He was not performing. He was just standing there, holding the weight of the morning. Do you understand everything I've said?
Yes, Your Honor, I do.
Then go do the work. And start with Frank Okafor. He walked out of my courtroom differently than he had walked in. Not smaller exactly, but quieter. The way a person moves when they are carrying something new and haven't yet decided where to set it down. The room was still for a moment after the door closed. Then, slowly, the ordinary sounds of a courtroom returned. Papers shuffling, someone clearing their throat, the next name being called. But something had settled in that gallery that morning, I could feel it. The people sitting in those rows, the young woman with her baby, the postal worker, the embarrassed teenager. They had watched a man with a captain's bars stand in the same spot they would stand in. They had watched the same questions get asked, the same accountability get applied. That matters. It matters more than people realize. Justice is not just the outcome. It is the visibility of the process. It is people being able to sit in a courtroom and watch the law apply itself evenly without checking what name is on the citation first. 40 days later, I received a brief report from the fire department's community division. Captain Gallow had begun his service hours. He had asked no special accommodations. He had shown up in civilian clothes, as requested. He had participated in a neighborhood fire safety workshop on Carver Street, of all places. He had helped install smoke detectors in 11 homes in the surrounding area. The division coordinator wrote one line at the bottom of the report. He asked good questions, and he listened. That's rarer than people think. 3 weeks after that, I received a handwritten note. It was from Evelyn Marsh, the retired librarian who had written the original complaint. She wrote that a man had come to her door and introduced himself as Raymond, not Captain, just Raymond. She wrote that he had asked her to tell him what she had seen that night, not to explain himself, just to listen. She wrote, I talked for a long time. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he said he was sorry and that he meant it. I'm 73 years old. I know the difference between someone performing an apology and someone sitting in one. He was sitting in it. She wrote that he had also visited Frank Okafor, that Frank had told her about it afterward, that the conversation had been short but honest, that Frank, who had lost 40 years of his life in one evening, had shaken the man's hand when he left. I set that letter down and sat with it for a while. There is a thing that happens to people who hold authority for a long time. It is not dramatic. It does not arrive all at once. It creeps in quietly through 10,000 small moments where the rules bent a little for you, where someone looked the other way, where consequence was softened because of who you were. And over time, you stop expecting the rules to apply to you the way they apply to everyone else. Not because you are evil, because you have been quietly taught that they don't. The most dangerous part of that is that you don't always know what's happening. Raymond Gallow did not walk into my courtroom as a villain. He walked in as a man who had genuinely stopped seeing what his choices cost other people, who had lost the habit of imagining himself on the other side of his own decisions. My job was not to destroy him. My job was to return him to that habit of imagining. I think the fire safety workshops on Carver Street, the quiet visit to Frank Okafor's door, the conversation with Evelyn Marsh on her porch, I think those things did more than any fine to put him back where he needed to be. Not just as a captain, as a person. My father came to this country from a small town in Italy with very little. He worked hard every day of his life, and he had a saying that I have carried for more than 60 years. He said, Francesco, authority is borrowed. It belongs to the people who gave it to you. The moment you forget that, you have already begun to misuse it. He was talking about small things, the foreman who shouts at the men beneath him, the shop owner who treats customers poorly because they need him more than he needs them. He was not talking about police captains and fire hydrants, but he was talking about exactly that. Every person who holds authority holds it on behalf of the people around them. The badge, the robe, the title, the corner office. These things are not ownership, they are trust. They can be revoked when they are misused, and they should be. Raymond Gallow had a choice when he walked into my courtroom. He could have let the smile carry him through. He could have paid the fine and walked out unchanged. He could have found a way to make this about the system rather than himself. He didn't do any of that. When the moment asked him to be honest, he was honest. When the moment asked him to sit in accountability, he sat in it. When I asked him to go to Frank Okafor with nothing but his own name, he went. That is not nothing. That is actually the whole thing. The last time I heard about Raymond Gallow was through a colleague who mentioned that his precinct had quietly earned recognition from the fire department for a collaborative community safety initiative, the first of its kind in the city. He had put his name on it, not to rehabilitate his reputation, at least I'd like to believe that, but because he had been inside those firehouses now. He had walked those neighborhoods with those crews. He understood something he had not understood before. And when you truly understand something, it tends to change how you move through the world. That is what I hope for in every case that comes before me. Not just compliance, change. Not just a fine paid, a person returned to themselves. The law is a framework, but justice is something you have to choose every day, in every decision that you think no one will notice. The bus stop on Meridian Street, the school crossing on Fenwick Avenue, the fire hydrant on Carver Street. No one was watching. That is precisely when it matters most. My father was right. Authority is borrowed, and the measure of the person who holds it is what they do when they believe no one is looking. Be that person, in whatever small ways you have. The person who holds the door, who takes the longer walk, who remembers that inconvenience to you might be crisis to someone else. We are all connected in ways we cannot always see, and the choice we make in one moment, on one street, in front of one hydrant, ripples outward in ways we will never fully know. Choose carefully. God bless you. Take care of each other. And if this story stayed with you, pass it on to someone who needs a reminder today that leadership begins with the small things no one is watching.